President.
Senator from Kentucky is recognized.
I want to compliment President Trump on being bold enough and strong enough to do something no president has contemplated in decades, Republican or Democrat, and that is to end the war in Afghanistan. We've been there for 17 years. We voted on a resolution initially that said that we would go after the people who attacked us on 9/11 and anyone who aided or abetted them. We did that. Today, there is no one living who attacked us on 9/11 that is free. There is no one living who aided or abetted the people who attacked us on 9/11. By any measurement, we are victorious. We killed bin Laden. We have disrupted the terror camps in Afghanistan. Is Afghanistan a mess? Sure, it's a mess. It's always been a mess and always will be a mess. But now our mission has changed to nation building. I want to compliment President Trump for being bold and brave in saying enough's enough. Let's spend that money at home. We spend $51 billion a year in Afghanistan. That money could be spent at home. I've got 3 members of my family in the military. I don't want them to go to Afghanistan. Every one of our political and military leaders, Republican, Democrat, and Independent, will tell you there is no military mission in Afghanistan, and yet we stay. Some of the very same people who say we have no mission in the next breath say we need to send more troops there. We sent 100,000 and we completely had victory, and then they came back as our troops came down. Are we to send 100,000 and keep them there forever? This resolution is an insult to the president, and I will oppose it. This resolution is put forward by Republicans who say to President Trump that you are leaving precipitously from Afghanistan. How do you leave precipitously after 17 years? 17 years. We are no longer fighting anyone who attacked us on 9/11. The people we are fighting were not even born when 9/11 happened. The war over there has nothing to do with 9/11. It has to do with nation building. And I'll tell you what one Navy SEAL told me that I met a year or two ago. He says, we'll go anywhere, we'll kill our enemy, we'll do what you ask of us, but the mistake is when you ask us to stay, plant the flag, and become policemen. They don't want to be policemen. Our military do not want to be the policemen of the world. We fight when we have to, and we should come home. That money should be spent here at home. I completely and vigorously oppose this condemnation of the president. They say we're leaving precipitously. We've been there 17 years. The same people, the War Caucus, and they're on both sides of the aisle, will also tell you if you announce that you're leaving in 6 months, then you're telegraphing to the enemy that you're leaving. So they don't want us to leave precipitously, but they don't want us to leave in a planned way. They've left us no way to leave. People talk about bipartisanship. What is the one thing that brings Republicans and Democrats together? War. They love it. More the better. Forever war. Perpetual war. We're spending $51 billion a year in Afghanistan. We spend it on luxury hotels that are half completed. The contractors have run off with the money. One of the hotels that sits across from our embassy serves as a place for snipers to shoot at our soldiers. We have to now patrol this half-built hotel where the guy who was building it ran off with the money. The government we supported, the Karzai government, for a decade grew more poppy than anybody in the world. The guy's brother was a drug dealer. His other brother was a thief and ran off with money. Is it any wonder that the Afghan people turn away from the government we've given them? It's time to declare victory and come home. This resolution, like so many resolutions, could be misinterpreted as another affirmation that we stay forever. So I also support language that should be added to this resolution that says, nothing in this resolution is to be construed as an authorization for war. Why? Because we had an authorization like this that didn't give power to the government to commit war about Libya. It was passed on a Thursday evening when many members were traveling back to their states, and President Obama at that time used it and said, oh, everybody's in favor of the new war in Libya. which also turned out to be a disaster. With regard to the troops in Syria, President Trump said, I will defeat ISIS and we will come home. Now the people are changing the mission. They say, we have to stay there till the Russians leave. We have to stay there till the Iranians leave. They've been there a long, long time. They're not leaving. That means we stay there forever. We have 2,000 troops compared to tens of thousands of other troops, compared to a couple 100,000 Turkish troops along the border. Do we really want to be involved in another enormous land war in the Middle East? To what end? The great irony of this is that the War Caucus, on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, those who will not ever let the soldiers come home, the great irony is typically they vent their anger and say the president has unlimited power and how dare Congress get in his way with regard to war. Here's the irony. We now have a president that wants to use his power to come home, and they're stepping in and saying, oh no, we need to make sure he's consulting with Congress because we want to stay at war forever, and the president wants to bring troops home. So this is a resolution to condemn the president for trying to bring troops home for the first time in 17 years. What are we spending the money on? $51 billion a year. We spent over $6 trillion between the Iraq War and the Afghan War, $6 trillion. But the $51 billion a year we're spending in Afghanistan, luxury hotel. We spent $45 million on a gas station. I think it was about $90 million on the hotel, $45 million on the gas station. Do you know what kind of gas they pump? Natural gas. How many people have a car in America that runs on natural gas? Virtually nobody. How many people in Afghanistan have a car that runs on natural gas? Zero. So we bought them some cars, then they didn't have any money, so we gave them credit cards to use the gas pumps. I sent my staff to see if the gas station even exists. They couldn't get there because it's too dangerous. After 17 years, you can't travel more than a few blocks in Kabul except without helicopter warships and an escort of dozens of Marines. It's completely a disaster. More poppy was grown there last year than in any recent year. And the people say, we shouldn't give up. All we have to do is send more soldiers. All we have to do is fight longer. When are they going to fight? They have 300,000 people in their army. When are they going to fight? If they want their homeland, stand up and fight for it. I'm tired of America always doing everybody else's fighting. I'm tired of America always paying for everybody else's war. People say, oh, well, they might come and attack us. We should be prepared. We should have robust intelligence. We should know what's going on, and we should disrupt terrorist camps if we have to. But every person out there who believes in this radical Islam, this radical jihad, is not coming over here. Every misbegotten village in Africa is not a threat to the United States, and that's the debate we should be having. They say it's in our national security interest. Really? To go to Niger? To go to Mali? To be fighting in Somalia? To be fighting in Yemen? To be fighting in Afghanistan, Iraq? That's not in our national interest. People say we must fight them there or they will come here. Well, guess what? They've been coming here since 9/11. We've arrested over 300 terrorists in our country. It was only a year ago, a dozen people were killed in New York by a terrorist, so it's not as if they haven't been coming. In fact, the terrorists, we don't condone their reasons for coming, but if you look at their reasons for coming, they say it's because we're over there. So we are trapped by this platitude. This platitude is, we must fight them over there so they won't be over here. Well, they are over here. And when they tell you why they're over here, they say they're over here because we're over there. I'm not saying we do nothing. I'm not saying we don't counter terrorism. But I will tell you that some remote village in Yemen where we swoop in at night and kill 15 people, including women and children, that when we kill those 15 people, the surrounding neighborhood and countryside for 100 years will speak through an oral tradition of the night the Americans came. Ultimately, Islam must police Islam. They are never going to accept Americans coming in and telling them how to live or how they should behave or getting rid of even bad elements among them. They need to step up and do it. So we've taken 99% of the land back from ISIS, but that's not enough. People say, they're still suicide bombers. Yes, there will be suicide bombers in the Middle East till the end of time. If we're waiting till there are no suicide bombers in the Middle East, we will wait forever. Can the people there do nothing to take care of themselves? Is there nobody there that can stop the 1% from coming back? Will people not step up and fight their own war? We've given them trillions of dollars, the uniforms, the weapons, everything has been ours. But every time we say we have to be involved, there are unintended consequences. In Syria, we gave arms to people who were radical extremists. We gave arms to people who actually were allied with al-Qaeda, who some say there's no difference between al-Qaeda and the people we gave them arms. At one point in time, it was said that ISIS had $1 billion worth of Humvees that were U.S. The arms that were coming out of Libya, that Hillary Clinton supported bringing those arms into Libya, they were going to the wrong people. We were taking one set of bad people and giving them to another set of bad people. Maybe sometimes there isn't a lesser of two evils. Maybe sometimes we have to be concerned about America. What I'm saying with this resolution is, I'm for replacing it completely and saying to President Trump, we think you're doing a great job, and thank goodness for being bold enough to say it's time to start thinking about America first. So I would like to ask unanimous consent that we get rid of the resolution condemning the president and that we replace it with a resolution that says simply this, that we applaud President Trump for being bold and brave enough to consider bringing our troops home, declaring victory, and ending America's longest war.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
The senator from Idaho is recognized.
Reserving the right to object, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
The objection is heard. The senator from Kentucky.
One of the things that I think is fundamental to our country is the freedom to protest, the freedom to dissent, and the freedom to boycott if you so choose. Our country was actually founded with a boycott. The boycott was dumping English tea into the ocean. In my state, Henry Clay was famous for passing legislation boycotting British goods so that people would wear American clothing. He actually fought a duel over that and became famous, and then became one of the most famous U.S. senators. But the idea that you should be allowed to boycott, that it's an extension of your speech, that it's an extension of the First Amendment, I think goes to the very heart of who we are as a people. And it's hard for me to believe, but part of this bill that they're putting forward would say that you can't do business with government. It would affirm state law that says you can't do business with government if you're involved with a boycott against Israel. Now, I'm not making really a point on whether the boycott's good or bad or with regard to Israeli policy. My point is whether it's good or bad with regard to the First Amendment. You see, the First Amendment isn't really about hearing from people about things that you like. If it's speech that you like and people say you're a great guy, you're not going to be offended by that speech. It's when people are critical of you or critical of your thoughts or have different thoughts. But that's what the First Amendment's about. This is an extraordinary thing in our country that people can actually speak up and speak their mind. If people don't think the settlements on the West Bank are a good idea, should they be allowed to speak their mind? Should they be forbidden from doing work for government? See, the problem is government's gotten so big that there was a teacher who was Muslim in Texas, and she was, I think she teaches autistic or special needs kids. She's a contractor, but she was asked to sign a statement saying that she would never boycott goods made in Israel. Well, she objects to some of the policies, I presume, on the West Bank. I think I don't agree with her, but that's a fundamentally American thing to be able to object. Should we have a law that says you can't boycott your government, that you can't boycott your government's policies? That to me is a real danger. So I have an amendment to this overall bill that would say simply this. We would remove any kind of affirmation of anti-boycotting legislation. That boycotting or protesting is something so fundamentally American, so fundamentally associated with the First Amendment, that even if we don't like what you're boycotting, even if we don't like what you're saying, that in America we allow that to happen because that's what freedom of speech is about. Freedom of speech is not about the easy stuff. It's not about the language that you like. It's not about, oh, if you're a Republican and everybody's saying Republican things, that's fine, but we're not going to hear from Democrats. Or if you're a Democrat, it's not like saying, well, the First Amendment's fine for Democrats, but we don't want to hear from those Republicans. It's about speech, whether you like it or not. Boycotting is speech. I remember when I was in college, I went to a Baptist college, and the Baptist women of the Southwest Baptist Convention didn't like pornography being out in the front of the store where kids could view it. And you know what they did? They marched. They didn't hurt anybody. They didn't commit violence. They did nonviolent protest by marching in front of the utility stores until, guess what? Because of the economic boycott and the bad press, the people put the pornographic magazines behind the counter and only adults were allowed to buy them and look at them. That's from a boycott. We boycotted English tea to found the country. Does anybody remember the boycotts in Montgomery? Rosa Parks didn't like the fact that she was being separated and told to sit in the back of the bus. And so what? African Americans from around the country, but definitely across Alabama and Montgomery, boycotted the bus system. Are we here to say that we're going to forbid boycotting? That we're going to say to the government, you can't do business? Here's the problem. People say, oh, it's a privilege to do business with the government. What if you're a physician and half of your business is with the government? What if you're a nurse? Half the health care in our country is paid for by the government. What if you're a teacher and you work in the public schools? Are we going to ask all these people to take a litmus test that they're not going to boycott or protest against their government's policy? What kind of country would we live in? And yet it's groupthink around here. Everybody's so paranoid and says, oh, we can't object to this lobby because this lobby's so powerful, we can't object to them. Look, it isn't about the ideas, it's about the freedom of speech. So I ask unanimous consent that my amendment be put forward, which is a germane amendment, and listen to what you'll hear here. There's going to be an objection. They're not going to let me vote on this. So not only are they going to ban boycotting, they're banning the idea that in the Senate we would vote on whether or not we would allow boycotting in our country. So my amendment is to take out the language that supports banning boycotts and reaffirm the First Amendment, and it will be denied because nobody wants to vote on this. Nobody wants to have a debate over the First Amendment. So I ask unanimous consent to set aside the pending amendment and call up my germane amendment that has everything to do with the bill, Amendment 102.
Is there objection?
Reserving the right to object, please, Mr. President. Mr. President, fellow senators, again, I part ways with my good friend Senator Paul on this one to a large degree. The speech that he gave, I'm in absolute agreement with, that the government should not be stopping any individual from boycotting whatever they want to boycott, for whatever reason they want to boycott. This is America. You have the First Amendment right to do that. But I would draw attention to Section 402, which simply states non-preemption of measures by state and local governments to divest from entities that engage in certain boycott, divestment, or sanctions activities targeting Israel or persons doing business in Israel or Israel-controlled territories. Look, if an individual wants to do this, this is America. People can do what they want. But if a government, state or local government, is going to use taxpayer dollars to engage in anti-Israel activities, that's a different ballgame. They are then using people's funds who disagree with what they want to do, and that's not right. Governments should not be state and local governments should not in any way be involved in boycotting other countries, particularly a country that is one of the best friends that we have in the world, really the only democracy in the Middle East, and they're doing it. Why? Because they're Jewish people. This is wrong. This is very, very wrong. And the BDS Act that we have here prohibits state and local governments from doing that. Any person who wants to do that, they have the First Amendment right to do that. But in any event, we think that this is a good measure that prohibits state and local governments from spending taxpayers' money in a way that many taxpayers don't want it spent. Mr. President, I object.
President.
The objection is heard. Under the previous order,
And to have 20 seconds.
Is there objection? Without objection.
I think that this is an important debate, and time will tell. This will go to the Supreme Court, and I expect the Supreme Court will rebuke this body for not carefully considering the First Amendment. Thank you.
The question now occurs on Amendment number 96, offered by the Senator from New Jersey, Mr. Menendez.